Hi friends, welcome back to my story time. Today we're going to read Gus Was a Friendly Ghost by Jane Thayer. And there's Gus, and that should be his friend Mousy Mouse. We've read some other Gus books and you can find those on my channel, but this I believe was the very first one. There was once a friendly ghost by the name of Gus. He lived in an old house in the country with apple trees and lilacs in the yard. Aww, kind of sounds like my grandma's house. She had apple trees and lilacs, purple lilacs. Mr. and Mrs. Scott and their twins Susie and Sammy lived there too. In the summer, the old house had an attic, and sometimes the Scotts heard rattles and clanks in it. That was Gus. The Scotts didn't believe in ghosts, so they didn't believe in Gus. Still, when they heard the rattles and clanks, they liked to say to their friends, "We've got a ghost." Scotts made Gus feel welcome in the old home, so Gus liked them. He especially liked Mrs. Scott. She was so pretty. Oh, look at them all sitting there. There's the Scotts. And there's Gus up in the attic. He wanted to please them all, so he rattled and clanked in the attic, the way ghosts are supposed to do. "We've got a ghost," said the Scotts proudly, though they didn't believe in ghosts. Then autumn came and the Scott family left. No need to rattle and clank now. Gus had nothing to do but sit around. Yep, there they are. And now look, he's not happy. He's all alone. There they go, leaving for the summer's over. One day he was so lonely sitting around by himself, he went for a walk and he met a mouse. "How are you?" said Gus. "Freezing," said the mouse with chattering teeth. "Come, spend the winter in my house," said Gus. "Are there people there?" said the mouse. I do hate people." "Not now," said Gus. Oh, there he is, talking to his friend the mouse. Mouse scurried about the house, and it seemed a good place to spend the winter, but it was chilly. "Let's build a fire in the fireplace," said Mouse with chattering teeth. "I'll get a match." And he scurried to the kitchen, but the Scotts had taken all the matches away on account of mice. "Bother," cried Mouse. Gus had never built a fire. Gus never get cold, but he wanted Mouse to be happy in his house. So he said some ghostly words he knew, and a fire began to blaze in the fireplace. "Well," said Mouse with delight, "let's have a bite. I'll look in the cupboard." He scurried to the kitchen, but the Scotts had taken all the food away on account of mice. "Bother," cried Mouse. Gus had never cooked a meal because ghosts never get hungry, but he wanted Mouse to be happy. "Toasted cheese sandwich?" said Gus. "There isn't any," began Mouse. Then he saw that Gus was slicing a big piece of cheese. And Mouse was delighted, and Gus was pleased that he had thought of cheese. Gus pulled the table up to the hearth, and he piled 9 pillows in a chair for Mouse. Mouse enjoyed the toasted cheese. There they are. There they are in front of the fire, all cozy and happy. Finally, Mouse wiped his whiskers. "Which is my room?" he said. "Take your pick," said Gus. "The bed will feel good," said Mouse. He scurried into the front room, but Mrs. Scott had put newspapers all over the bed on account of mice. Mouse made a face. "I do hate newspaper," he said. And he scurried into the back room, and he curled up in a drawer, but Mrs. Scott had put mothballs in the drawer on account of mice, of course. Mouse made a terrible face. "I do hate mothballs," he said. Gus wanted Mouse to be happy in his house. "Try the attic," he said. Mouse ducked into a hole in the wall, and Gus showed him and found his way to the attic. He burrowed into an old mattress and went to sleep on the stuffing. Goodness, Mouse just is kind of demanding. Gus washed the dishes. He was delighted to have Mouse in the house for company. When Mouse woke up, he scurried downstairs and said, "How do I get out of here?" "Don't go," cried Gus. "Aren't you hungry?" "What are we having for dinner?" said Mouse. And Gus began to be very busy. Mouse liked 3 meals a day, with nibbles in between. So Gus put on an apron, and he got out a cookbook, and he cooked up all the things that the mouse might like to eat. He spilled sugar all over the floor, and got flour all over his face. Look at Gus in his little apron. How cute. He burnt his fingers, but he made macaroni and cheese and cheesecake. He whipped up cheese soup and cheese sauces, and he made cheese bread and cheese biscuits, cheese popovers, and cheese pie. Mouse never had time to help. He was so busy with various matters, but Gus didn't mind. Mouse grew plump on the cheese sauce. At night when it snowed, Mouse read to Gus by the fire. Sometimes they played checkers. Sometimes they popped corn. Firelight flickered on the old window panes and smoke curled up the chimney, and no one was near to notice. Lots of cheese for the mouse. At last the snow melted and the sun grew warm and the buds on the apple tree swelled and the lilacs burst into bloom, and one day a car drove into the yard and the Scotts were back. When Mouse heard Susie and Sammy running through all the rooms, he ducked into a hole in the wall and rushed to the attic. Then he peeked out at the mattress and saw his friend Gus, and he cried angrily, "I'll scare them away." "Why? They're nice," said Gus in surprise, and he was glad to see the Scotts, especially Mrs. Scott. But Mouse had been so happy in the house with Gus's cooking and everything that he was furious to think the Scotts had come and spoiled it. Gus couldn't cook with Mrs. Scott in the kitchen, so Mouse scampered down to the parlor. And when the Scotts were playing checkers, he ran back and forth inside the wall, pitter, patter, 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 pitter, patter, to scare them away. "We've got a mouse," said Mr. Scott, but the Scotts weren't scared away. "What do you want to do for that?" said Gus to the mouse. Mouse paid no attention. He scampered into the kitchen and he nibbled on a piece of blackberry pie, and he tracked juice around, and he chewed open a box of marshmallow cookies, and he spilled some tapioca. Goodness. Mouse sounds kind of like a naughty mouse. He sounds kind of bratty. "Behave yourself," said Gus. Mouse scampered into the bedroom and chewed a hole in the pillow for good measure, but the Scotts weren't scared away, so Mouse scurried up to the attic after the Scotts were in bed and stamped about over their heads, making all the noise a mouse could possibly make. Finally, Mr. Scott set a trap. And the next day, Mouse saw a new thing in the attic, and it smelled something good, and he was so hungry and his nose quivered and he got closer and closer. "Keep away," said Gus. "It's cheese," said Mouse. "It's a trap to catch you," said Gus. Yup, there it is. Gus is trying to warn him. He put up a sign that said "Danger" when Mrs. Scott didn't catch the mouse, and set another trap, and then another. Gus kept putting up signs that said "Beware." "Why can't you folks get along?" said Gus. But the more mouse traps Mr. Scott set, the more Mouse stamped about among the danger signs to scare the Scotts away. Gus began to get really worried. He didn't want his friends, the Scotts, bothered, and he didn't want his friend Mouse hurt. "I'll never forgive myself if anything happened," he said. Look at all those signs. Gus is trying to protect him. And I agree with Gus. Why can't they just get along? Then one day, Mouse became so determined to scare the Scotts out of the house that he popped out of a kitchen shelf bold as brass. When Mrs. Scott reached for some cereal, "Help!" screamed Mrs. Scott, running away. That was the last straw. When Gus saw Mrs. Scott, who was so pretty scared out of her wits, all of a sudden, he pointed his finger at the mouse and roared, "That's enough!" Ooh. Mouse is in trouble now. Shame on Mouse, being bold as brass. Mouse was so shocked that he stood stock still and stared. "Listen to me," shouted Gus. "If you want to stay in this house, you'll do as I say from now on." "What?" whispered Mouse. "You'll stop scaring Mrs. Scott," roared Gus. "Okay," said Mouse meekly. "You'll stop nibbling and chewing. You can go out into the garden and eat nasturtium seeds," shouted Gus. "Okay," said the Mouse. "You'll keep quiet while the folks play checkers." "I'll walk on tiptoes," said Mouse. "You'll stop stamping around the attic. I'm the only one allowed to make noise in the attic." "I'll be quiet as a mouse," said Mouse. "All right, then," said Gus with a sigh of relief. Then he saw how meek and scared Mouse looked. "It's just till the folks go away," he said kindly. So Mouse tiptoed about the house and ate nasturtium seeds in the garden. And the Scotts said, "That mouse is gone," and Mr. Scott took away the traps. Gus rattled and clanked extra loud in the attic so the Scotts could say, "That's our ghost." And then the Scotts went away for the winter, and Gus and Mouse had a celebration of cheese croquettes for dinner. See, now they could get along if they'd stop being selfish. When Mouse stopped being selfish, then he could get along with the Scotts and they could all be happy. Sometimes that's what you have to do, is get along with people and make compromises. And think sometimes of others before yourself. Actually, it's pretty good a lot of times to think about other people before yourself. Because when you get selfish, it tends to kind of mess things up. So anyway, if you like my channel where I read stories, particularly children's stories, come back again, please. Give me a thumbs up. Leave the name of a book and the author, and I'll see if I have it or if I can get it, and I'll be happy to read it. and I hope that you have a great day.